I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire, on which the sun never sets. Those were the words of Nathan Rothschild in 1815, when he was just 38 years old. Not a king, not a general, not even British, just a banker. And he was completely serious when he said that. Because by the time Napoleon fell, the Rothschild family controlled wealth greater than the entire British treasury. Just 10 years later, that figure reached £5 million, more than every private bank in London. Combined, more than the budgets of most European kingdoms. But if you open a history textbook, you'll find hundreds of pages about Napoleon, about Wellington, about the great battles. And the Rothschilds? Maybe a single line, or nothing at all. We remember Napoleon through monuments, museums, dozens of films. But the Rothschilds? Just vague conspiracy theories, unanswered questions on Google. And that's exactly what they wanted, a family wielding enormous power, yet nearly invisible in mainstream history. They figured out something that takes most people a lifetime to realize. You don't need to conquer a nation with an army. You just need to finance the conqueror. Then, own their debt. When you hold the debt, you control the terms. And when you control the terms, you essentially own the nation. Once you understand this mechanism, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Because they didn't just do this once and stop. They created the entire blueprint. A system we're still living in to this day. This is the story of how a family from a locked Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt built an empire without firing a single shot. The most powerful empires are the ones built in silence. Frankfurt, 1744. The Judengasse. Picture a narrow, filth-ridden alleyway where over 3,000 Jews lived like prisoners without a sentence. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born into this. He wasn't supposed to escape. His destiny was set. Become a rabbi, a man of God. But when his parents died when he was 12, that world vanished. Mayer didn't mourn. He adapted. While apprenticing at a banking house in Hanover, young Mayer learned a skill more valuable than any ledger: how to read the vanity of the elite. He realized that European princes had an insatiable obsession with proving their status through history. They craved the coins of fallen empires, Roman gold, Persian silver, Byzantine relics. When he returned to Frankfurt, Mayer didn't start by lending money. He started as a treasure hunter. Mayer spent months scavenging scrap heaps and local markets, buying rusted, unrecognizable coins for the price of junk. He spent his nights meticulously polishing them until they gleamed with their former imperial glory. But here was his genius move. He never tried to sell to crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse. Instead, he sent Wilhelm beautifully crafted catalogs, detailing the heroic lineage of each coin. Mayer knew Wilhelm was a man consumed by pride and suspicion. The prince trusted a Jewish dealer like Mayer more than the established Christian bankers, for a brutal reason. A Jew from the ghetto had no civil rights, no political standing, and no protection. If Mayer betrayed him, Wilhelm could crush him with a snap of his fingers. Mayer's lack of status was Wilhelm's ultimate guarantee of loyalty. There is a famous anecdote of their first real encounter. Mayer presented Wilhelm with a rare collection, but offered it at a price so low it was absurd. When the prince, bewildered, asked why, Mayer bowed deeply and replied, "I am not selling coins, Your Highness. I am investing in your protection." It wasn't business. It was a bribe, disguised as a passion for art. Mayer turned himself into an indispensable pocket keeper. He mastered the art of reading the desires of the powerful before they even realized them. By 1769, when he was granted the title of court factor, Mayer had achieved the impossible. He held the keys to the fortune of the wealthiest man in Europe. The Judengasse was still locked every night. But for Mayer Amschel, the gates were gone. He hadn't just found an exit. He'd found the way to turn his chains into the very threads that would eventually bind the kings of Europe. Mayer Amschel had 5 sons, and he turned them into 5 sharpened blades aimed at the financial heart of Europe. He deployed them to 5 strategic hubs: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. But don't mistake this for simple expansion. The real goal was to establish the world's first transnational financial intelligence network. Think of it like this. In the 19th century, power didn't come from a gun, it came from the speed of information. While governments relied on aging horses and slow military transport ships, the Rothschilds built their own private internet. They operated a fleet of express carriages, secret relay stations across the continent, and most importantly, a sophisticated network of carrier pigeons. Every message was written in a private family code that no government spy could ever hope to crack. The speed gap was staggering. A report from Paris could reach Nathan in London in less than 48 hours, while official government dispatches often took 5 days. In the world of high finance, that 72-hour window was the difference between a billion-dollar fortune and total bankruptcy. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 is the ultimate case study in how this trap was sprung. On the morning of June 20th, Nathan Rothschild stood leaning against his usual pillar at the London Stock Exchange, his face an unreadable mask. Thanks to his private network, he already knew Napoleon had been crushed at Waterloo a full day and a half before the British government's own dispatch arrived. This was the moment Nathan turned information into a weapon of mass destruction. Instead of buying, he did the unthinkable. He started dumping. With a grim expression, as if mourning a national disaster, Nathan flooded the market with British bonds. Other investors, who watched Nathan's every move like a compass, immediately spiraled into a panic. They thought, Nathan knows something. Britain has lost. A frantic sell-off ignited. The value of British bonds went into a free-fall, crashing to rock bottom. And at the exact moment the market hit the floor when the terror was at its peak, Nathan gave the order to his secret agents to quietly buy it all back. Every single bond. When the official news of victory finally reached London the next day, bond prices rocketed skyward. In a single morning, Nathan increased his fortune 20-fold. He didn't just beat the market, he devoured it. This wasn't investing. It was a psychological masterclass in market manipulation, executed on a continental scale. By the way, if you want to understand how modern finance actually works, instead of the sanitized version they teach in schools, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. The Rothschilds operated with a mindset entirely foreign to the old aristocracy. They didn't care for land. They craved liquidity. They poured wealth into stocks, bonds, and debt instruments. Why? Because an angry mob can burn down your mansion, but they can't torch a bond sitting in a high-security vault in London. Their power wasn't built on fragile bricks. It was built on invisible cash flows that were impossible to kill. But absolute power always comes with a bill, and the Rothschilds began paying it just as they reached the summit. By the 1840s, the family's greatest asset, their secrecy, became their biggest liability. They weren't seen as brilliant bankers anymore. They were seen as shadow-dwelling parasites. During the revolutions of 1848, angry mobs in Paris and Frankfurt didn't just storm palaces, they targeted Rothschild offices. Why? Because the people realized that while kings could be overthrown, the nation's debt remained firmly in the pockets of one family. They became the face of everything the world hated: capitalism, transnationalism, extreme inequality. Caricatures of Nathan as an octopus strangling the globe flooded the streets. They weren't just individuals anymore. They were a monster in the eyes of the public. Then came World War I, and the family's century-old playbook finally glitched. For the first time, nationalism was more powerful than cash flows. When the Rothschilds tried to finance both sides to maintain their balance of power, The public saw it as the ultimate betrayal. They weren't neutral bankers anymore, they were war profiteers. The public mood turned venomous. The hatred shifted from their bank accounts to their bloodline, providing the fuel for a fire that was about to consume Europe. The 1930s weren't just a crisis. They were an execution. In Vienna, after the Nazi annexation, the family didn't just lose money, they were liquidated. The Nazis seized everything: 3,500 priceless artworks, dozens of palaces, and every single banking asset. Louis von Rothschild was imprisoned for a year, only released after the family paid a staggering ransom of $21 million, a record-breaking figure for the time. The final blow came from the very place they had financed the most: Paris. In 1982, the French socialist government nationalized their bank. The ghost of Napoleon finally found his revenge. They lost their ownership, their name on the building, and their absolute dominance. Out of the 5 heads of the Hydra, only London remained standing. But this collapse taught them the final, most important lesson of power. If you want to survive forever, you must become invisible. They maintained a ruthless survival strategy dictated by Mayer Amschel's will. Wealth only passed through the male line. This led to a staggering amount of inbreeding to keep the capital from leaking out. Between 1824 and 1877, there were 36 family marriages. Most were between first and second cousins. They chose genetic isolation over financial dilution. They realized that while bank branches can be seized, an empire built on bloodlines and secret debt is nearly impossible to kill. Today, they still sit on the boards of giants like Rio Tinto, De Beers, and Royal Dutch Shell. They don't need their name on the front door to run the building. They just need their name on the contracts that own the Earth's resources. The Rothschild name doesn't scream from the headlines anymore. It doesn't have to. Instead, it sits quietly on asset management reports worth $109 billion. It's tucked away in the world's most prestigious vineyards and buried in cross-continental mining and energy deals. But their real legacy isn't the cash. It's the system they left behind. Look at how the world operates today. Central banks? The Rothschild model. Government bonds? A Rothschild innovation. Profiteering from war under the guise of neutrality? That's a playbook they wrote themselves. You think empires like John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil were built from nothing? Look closer. Rockefeller was financed by banks under Rothschild control. The backroom deals that allowed Standard Oil to strangle its competition were negotiated by Jacob Schiff, a man who grew up in the very same house as the Rothschilds in Frankfurt. Today, when you see giants like BlackRock managing $10 trillion, or Vanguard holding shares in every major corporation on the planet, don't ask who they are. Ask, who taught them? The Rothschilds didn't disappear. They reached the ultimate level of power: invisibility. They pulled their name off the glittering billboards to hide within complex debt structures that no revolution or angry mob can touch. They realized that in a world of fake transparency, the one who holds the secrets is the one who wears the crown. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the poor kid from the Judengasse, was supposed to be a rabbi. But a twist of fate made him choose gold over scripture. What if his parents hadn't died young? Maybe Napoleon would have won. Maybe the British Empire would have collapsed. And maybe the entire architecture of modern finance would look completely different. One death, one pivot, one family, and the entire world we live in was molded in their image. The Rothschilds don't need to own the throne, because they own the people sitting on it. And remember, the greatest empires are the ones you can't see. If you stayed until the very end, leave a comment. I want to know how many of you actually dare to look at the truth behind the curtain. If you want to know more about the real owners of history, hit subscribe. See you in the shadows of history.